Well, as you know, the No Kings March took place all over the country this past weekend. The cherry blossoms reached peak bloom. The weather hit 88 degrees yesterday. Boy, it was marvelous. And in an effort to control who can receive an absentee ballot, the president signed an executive order to limit mail-in voting, And also yesterday, the Supreme Court held oral arguments on birthright citizenship to consider if the president's order restricting birthright citizenship is constitutional. There's so much more happening in around the nation's capital, and it's all covered right here in the Washington Informer. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. I'm your host, Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer. It's Holy Week across the country, and Christians are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Churches will open their doors tomorrow to a multitude of people, some who only attend church on Easter as part of their family tradition. Well, we have the privilege today of speaking with three remarkable leaders with inspiring journeys in their role as pastors who are making a difference in their community. Joining us today are Reverend Delonte Gholston, pastor of Peace Fellowship Church in Ward 7, Reverend Rodney L. Carter Jr., pastor of Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church in Ward 5, and Reverend Kevin Lamar Peterman, pastor of 19th Street Baptist Church in Ward 4. But before we bring on our guests, we want to remind you to pick up your copy of the Washington Informer at a newsstand near you. You can also read the digital edition online by visiting our website at washingtoninformer.com. We invite you to become a subscriber by signing up on the website. Please be sure to share this broadcast on your social media platforms and follow us on ours on Facebook, IG, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Washington Informer TV. Again, that's Washington Informer TV. Sign up and become a part of the Informer family. We think, a yeoman's job of trying to keep our community informed. And so we want you to become a part of the Informer family. So we're going to move forward and go ahead and introduce our first guest, Reverend Delonte Gholston. I think we have a short video, and I look forward to the conversation. So stay tuned.
We will not bow. No, we won't bow to any power that traffics in fear and division. We will not bow. We won't bow to an empire or to a regime that believes in separating us by the documentation or the status that we carry or the faith that we witness to or the people that we love or the places that we come from, because our God knows the places that we are going. Our God is not concerned about where we came from.
Powerful message there, Reverend Gholston. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
How y'all doing?
People may know you. You've been in the DMV for quite some time because you've organized many peace walks. You were at the Coalition of Churches and Community Organizations committed to ending police and community violence. You are a theologian, a songwriter, a musician. Wow. And a proud alumna of DC Public Schools, Swarthmore College and Fuller Theological Seminary. That's just my 2 cents on, your journey. But would you please share your journey as a young man growing up in Washington, D.C. and, entering a community of faith?
Wow. First of all, thank you for this invitation to be among such amazing colleagues and co-laborers in the gospel today. Thanks for this opportunity just to share on this Holy Week. It's been, as it's been stated, I'm born and raised here in the District of Columbia. I grew up uptown, I graduated from Brent Elementary School, Paul Junior High School before it became a high school, and Banneker Academic High School. And my call to ministry really started when I was at Brent Elementary School. I remember I was born and raised coming out of the New Home Baptist Church at 3423 Home Meat Place. Pastor Bobby D. Hicks is my pastor. He's the man that installed me, licensed me, ordained me, and installed me as pastor at Peace Fellowship Church. And I was about 6 years old when Pastor Hicks started an oratory contest for Black History Month. It was like one of the first or second times where Black History Month was actually a thing. I think it was like 87 or 86. And I memorized, my dad had me memorize these speeches by Dr. King. And I remember I went to Israel Baptist Church at 12th Rhode Island Avenue, right up the street from Greater, Mount Calvary, Holy Church. At that time, I went to Israel Baptist Church. Reverend Anthony Moore had invited Wyatt T. Walker, one of Dr. King's lieutenants, to come and to speak and to preach. And I was invited as a 6-year-old to share the words that I had memorized from Dr. King's drum major instinct speech. And I just remember sharing those words as a kid, the power that I felt in the church that day. And my dad and I had wrote an addendum to Dr. King's words in the drum major instinct speech, where we said that if King was alive today, he wouldn't just be in Georgia, where my dad is from, but he would be on Georgia Avenue Northwest. He wouldn't just be in Alabama, but on Alabama Avenue Southeast, not just in Mississippi, but on Mississippi Avenue Southeast. And Marion Barry was there that day, and they had to put me on a step, and reach the mics down so I could speak. And as I was trying to step down from the step, Marion Barry picked me up and kind of swung me around and told me how proud of me he was. And there was something about those elders, Wyatt T. Walker, Marion Barry, Reverend Anthony Moore, Bobby D. Hicks, to see something in you as a young person and to give you those initial opportunities to speak. And it was in that spirit that Pastor Dixon asked me to be youth pastor when I was 14 at New Home, while playing the keys some Sundays, while playing the drums other Sundays. On my Sunday to preach, I had an opportunity to preach to young people. And as they say, the rest is history. I wrestled with my call for a long time until I was in my 20s, and finally left DC and went to seminary to finally pursue the call, and was called back to DC to pastor Peace Fellowship in 2018.
One of the conversations that we've had is the role or the distinction between the role of a preacher and a pastor. And when you took on this role as pastor, how did that distinguish, the role that you took on from what you thought, between the preacher and the pastor, if you understand what I'm asking?
No, that's a great question. I'll tell you what Pastor Hicks told me when he installed me at Peace Fellowship. He said that a shepherd ought to always smell like the sheep. And I took that seriously, meaning that the job of the preacher is to encourage God's people. The job of the preacher is to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ in season and out of season. But the job of the pastor is to get to know God's people, and not just to get to know the people, but to be known by God's people. I lead from a place of vulnerability. I share from the pulpit about my own history and struggles with depression and anxiety. I've shared my own family's experiences of incarceration, my own family's experiences of nearly losing my dad being shot, of my nephew being shot. I share from a vulnerable place, and I try in everything I do, every hospital visit, every prison visit, every psych ward visit, every time I drop off a bucket of chicken to whatever the case may be, or drop off some hummus for my vegan members, to make sure that that I smell like the sheep. I have the scent of the people that I'm privileged to pastor. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and it does. And I think part of that goes into what you may have thought as a pastor, how to gather the sheep, how to bring them into the house so that you can pastor and preach to them. But and so many others that our churches, have lost sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So as a younger pastor, right, and part of it could have been just the old ways. I used to wonder, I still wonder, I want to do a story on it. What's happened to the robe, right? Because very few ministers or pastors wear robes anymore. But there was the old way of doing things, and now there's a different way because the sheep are different. It's a different flock. So what makes you? How do you feel as though you're reaching the sheep and getting them to gather in your house of worship?
Well, first of all, I don't want to throw no shade on a good robe. I love me a good robe. I'm Baptist born and bred, so my mother would tell me when I was a kid, even as young as 3 or 4, I used to put on my bathrobe and go down to the living room and bang on the table like my pastor was banging on the pulpit. I love me a good robe now, and I know both Pastor Peterman and Pastor Carter. I've seen them both in nice robes when I've seen them preach, and I certainly will don a robe every now and then. But the real garment that our people are looking for, Isaiah talks about replacing a spirit of heaviness with a garment of praise. And I think the real garments that we are to wear are modeled on this Maundy Thursday by a man named Jesus who disrobed himself to literally wash the feet of the people who were his friends, who were his disciples. He told them explicitly, "Don't call me Lord or Master, but call me friend, and you won't be able to even be a part of this movement that I'm creating or this thing I'm doing in the earth unless you allow me to serve you." And I don't know. I'm not that dude. I'm not an unapproachable pastor. I'm not the type of person that has security all around me. I grew up in church, so I've seen and I felt what that feels like to be, I don't know, a leader who is too distant from their sheep or feels like they need to be protected from the people that they're pastoring. And so I try my best to be, to maintain strong boundaries, of course, to protect my family, but I try to lead from a place of accessibility, a place of vulnerability. I try to take the church outside of the church walls as often as possible. I mean, this past Palm Sunday is one example. We decided to gather our palms in the parking lot and to partner with DPW and pick up some brooms and rakes and shovels and just go out with the kids and the brothers and sisters in the community and to clean up the neighborhood. We wanted to spread peace in that way on a Palm Sunday, which is something that most churches I would get some smoke behind doing that. But people ask, who are y'all? What are y'all doing? And I think when we were able to respond by saying, "Oh, we're just a church up the street," that people were like, "Oh, wow." One brother even said, brother named Mike, he said, "It seemed like so often we see people in our communities that aren't from our communities who are trying to take care of our communities." He was like, "Pastor, I'm glad to see that you out here with your people, doing that." So that's kind of some of my approach is to figure out how to do Sundays differently. Because you're right, people don't really come out like they used to for Saturday events. So people don't come out like they used to for Wednesday night Bible study. It's not always jam packed. And so, I'm constantly, our leadership team and I are constantly experimenting with, okay, how do we do things differently? And not just for social media, although I appreciate, every platform, but just to be known and to be loved and respected by the people that you're shepherding and by the community that you're in.
And you're preparing for a Sunday. There are a couple of times during the year. Of course, Christmas is one, but Easter is the time when you might have to bring out the extra chairs in the pews just to just to make sure that you have room for everybody. And I'm sure you're preparing something special, not only for in the church, but also in your sermon. So what kind of preparation are you working on for tomorrow, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday?
Right. We call them CME Christians, Christmas, Mother's Day, and
Oh,
Easter
about that. Yeah.
Christians.
Day.
And I think it's important that we don't shame people for coming to church on the time that they do. I'm not going to be mad at anybody that I only see during those times, but while I do have them, I want to encourage them. And ask about preparation. I went this morning to Wesley Theological Seminary to pick up a couple of commentaries, right? So I try to always hear from a womanist perspective. So I'm always reading from a series called the W series. I'm a big fan of Justo Gonzalez and his Luke commentary, because I'm going to be preaching from Luke on Friday tomorrow night at Union Temple. So I'm really big fan of this Belief series. And then I'm also a big fan. I don't even know the name of this. It's the New Testament Library series. I'm always trying to make sure that I'm theologically prepared for what God would have me say. And of course, we'll have everything that any other church would have. We'll have something for the kids. We'll have a little photo booth so families can take family photos together. But the main thing is to really meditate and to reflect on. I'll personally be reflecting on Thomas this Sunday because as a pastor, I'm not going to lie. This is the time in which I've been experiencing my doubts. I've been having my doubts. And as I said, I leave from a very vulnerable place, and I will share about what it is like to live in an age like this, but to know that Jesus calls his disciples even despite their doubts, and that encourages me just as a brother from uptown who has seen a lot. And sometimes the hoop doesn't come easy. Sometimes I just have to be honest about what it is I'm facing. And I don't know. I hope and I pray that anybody who's hearing this message or seeing this message will know that if the signs of this time or this age, war and rumors of war and shootings on our streets and curfews and all these things, if it's causing a haze or a malaise in your spirit, just be encouraged that God is not afraid of your doubts, but that the hope of the resurrection is that God sends us and calls us in spite of them. And so that's what I'm meditating on and reflecting on this Easter resurrection weekend.
I appreciate that, Reverend Gholston. I hope that you can hold on, because we're going to talk to two other pastors. And then before the show ends, I'd like to bring the three of you all together to have a brief conversation. I don't know what your time is like, but you got a few?
I'll be honored to stay on with these dynamic brothers, of course.
Wonderful. Okay. So at this time, we're going to bring on Pastor Rodney L. Carter, who is the Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church pastor, and we're going to hear a little bit from him. We'll be right back.
You don't need more motivation. You need less distractions. Some things won't move just because you prayed once. Some things won't break because you meant well. Some things won't change because it requires more than words. Jesus, this kind, which means there's going to be a level of resistance that requires a new level of consecration.
Wow, it's my pleasure to introduce Reverend Rodney L. Carter, who preached your first sermon at age 5 and was licensed to preach at age 14 and ordained at age 27. That was last year, right?
Oh, word. Oh my. Okay.
That's amazing. Archives. Yeah. Well, the proof is in the photo. So we said it and you can see it. And so I want to talk a little bit about your journey first, the fact that where you attended school and where you're from. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I'm born and raised here in Washington, D.C. My grandfather pastored in Southeast Washington, D.C., Revival Temple Church. And so I grew up in D.C. and Grateful for the upbringing of my family. While I was born and raised here in DC, I recognize that both of my grandparents were pastoring in DC. So while one of my grandfathers pastored in Southeast Washington, DC, my other grandfather pastored was the assistant pastor at Mount Lebanon Baptist Church. So I would quote unquote be said that I was drugged to church and really was instilled into the gospel of Jesus Christ and Christendom. So gave my heart to the Lord at a very young age, had a desire to preach, not just like my grandfathers, but I felt a sense from God, just be able to help others to find the love of Jesus Christ. Grew up here in DC, but then I matriculated and went to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. After attending Washington Bible College, our schools ended up merging. While I was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, I was there, received my bachelor's degree, stayed there for a while, ended up pastoring two different churches while I was in Pennsylvania. And it's been a great journey. While I was in Pennsylvania pastoring, I received a call from one of my spiritual fathers, Archbishop Alfred A. Owens Jr., who is the founding pastor of Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church, called me and asked me to come and succeed him in ministry. And when your father ministry calls and the Lord gives you the blessing, that's when you move. And so been here at Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church now for 4 years, and now been the lead pastor now for 2 years. And so it's been a joy
You
and a
know, but
privilege.
that sounds real. It's awesome, but it also sounds I can't think of the word, but Pastor Owens was, he like many, had a legacy here in Washington and
Yes.
really built that church. And for you to be asked, first of all, I mean, would have made it a little easier, but then did it. I mean, you're now getting ready to step into the footsteps, people who've grown up in that church, second, third generation folks. I mean, what was that transition like for you?
Well, Bishop Owens has been in my life since I was a kid. Bishop Alfred Owens and my grandfather, Bishop Milton Carter, were great friends. And so my grandfather had a stroke. And so when my grandfather had a stroke as a young preacher, he asked Bishop Owens to kind of take me in. And so he kind of stood in that place as a grandfather for me. And when I was 13 years old, actually, Bishop Alfred Owens teaches a class called homiletics, which is really the the mechanics of putting a sermon together. He actually teaches that class at Howard University, but also teaches it here at our Bible school, Calvary Bible Institute. And so I took that when I was 13 years old. And so now seeing the full circle now, being able to now be his successor, it is a huge honor, but also a weighty responsibility. Bishop Alfred Owens started this church when he was 19 years old and pastored this church for 58 years. And so this year we're celebrating 60 years of our church. And so while it has been a transition, I would say it's been a healthy transition. Normal founding pastor transitions, and actually this is a founding pastor transition, but also what you would call a legacy transition. Legacy transitions are normally pastors who serve more than 30 years. And through statistics, those are the hardest pastoral transitions.
Mhm.
And I say because of God's grace and His support, this has been a very healthy transition for us as a church. And so, while it has its challenges, while transitions all have their challenges, it has been great to see that our church has been growing, the momentum has been there, and it's been great to still have Him with me in this journey.
So when you say challenges, Pastor Carter, what, and I'm sure, many pastors share some of those, but what would you describe as, maybe your biggest challenge that you faced?
hmm Well, some of the biggest challenges is we recognize the climate that we're in. And
Hmm.
so, pastoring Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church, which is one of the prominent African American Pentecostal churches in our city, we recognize that we own a lot of property on Rhode Island Avenue. And so, recognizing the political change, recognizing the economic changes that are taking place, it's important for us to recognize how do we continue to be that beacon for our community, but also recognize that we have so many other nonprofits that we have. Currently, we have our Family Life Center, and we serve over 8,000 a month. We have different social services. And so, with the economic change, with the political change, the needs are different. And so, trying to manage transition while also managing the tension of our culture and of our the culture and climate of our city, that has been a challenge. And but it's been great because we recognize that us as African Americans, we know how to make it through hard times. And so that's been a great challenge to embrace, but one I believe a Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church has been in a position to be able to address.
You know, you bring up a thought because we know that with the economic changes and the demographic changes of the District of Columbia, a lot of church members that lived in neighborhoods now have to travel further to go to church. And then COVID did a lot to keep people or to make people start participating in what they call stay-at-home Baptists or whatever. You know, they're no longer making that journey to worship in person. And so how has that affected you? To me, it would seem like it would have been a challenge, especially coming in right during the pandemic. You said 4 years ago, you're right
Yes.
in the middle of that pandemic. So what was
Yes.
that like?
Well, it's actually interesting. So my first Sunday that I was supposed to start, we actually had to shut the church down because that second round of COVID took place.
Right.
And so I was not able to interact with a lot of the members for the first 5 months of my time here at Calvary. I came in as the associate pastor. And but the blessing is that because of what we have been able to instill within our church, the community aspect. Also, we have leveraged technology. We have also built a studio here, a production studio that has allowed us to create a space for our members who are virtual and continue to enhance our virtual, I would say, congregation as that has continued to expand. But as it relates to the challenges with it, it actually has been a blessing. It has allowed us to look at some of the structures that we have in place, some systems, some initiatives, and saying how can we continue to reach beyond the four walls of our city and be able to reach out to the other communities and it's been a blessing. But the challenge has been as it relates to those who have been affected from the COVID experience. Some are still leery to come, but it has been a blessing because we've still been able to reach them as well.
So, as a pastor, you know, one of the things I think, and I'm not one, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, you do kind of have to assess the needs of your congregation and your message, your ministry, all of that focuses on that. And I don't know if it's different at Greater Mount Calvary than it would be in any place else, but how do you sort of assess what your members need and how do you address those needs? You talked about the nonprofit programs that you have, but I mean through your word and through your ministry.
Mhm. Well, I love what Pastor Gholston said. You have to smell like the sheep, and so that's one of the things my predecessor and our founding pastor Bishop Alfred Owens has taught me. While we would be considered a mega or large church, one of the things Bishop has taught us is really being able to have our ear and connection with the sheep. And so that's one of the things I do on a regular basis is I'm really connecting not only with hearing what I believe God wants me to say to the people, but really looking at what are the needs of our current congregation. How can I be able to meet them where they are? How can I bring hope, especially in this climate that we're in? And so that's one of the things that I have been able to do is continue to instill that same model of ministry, but also recognizing here at Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church, we don't just provide uh, hope through the word of God, but we also do it through other initiatives and opportunities to empower our people. Yes, preaching and encouraging them is one thing, but it's another thing to give them the tools necessary. So when we had the shutdown on last year, we started something called Together We Care. It's an initiative that we provided where we were able to provide financial support to some of our members who were let go because of the shutdown or were either furloughed. We also provided some resources when we partnered with Bowie State University. We had them to come in, and they basically gave them courses and instruction on how to relook at your resume. How can you improve that? What are some other job opportunities? How can you actually start your own business right now? So we've tried to empower our people, but yet also encourage them as well.
Wonderful. And I think before we close this segment, I want to ask what you have planned for this Easter weekend. Hopefully, the house will be full, and
Yes.
you'll want people to leave feeling a certain kind of way. What is the message? What are the activities that you have planned there?
Well, it's all about hope. It's the hope of Christ. And so on tomorrow, we have our Good Friday service. Actually, your next guest, Pastor Kevin Peterman, who is one of my good friends, he will actually be sharing with us on tomorrow. So we have some great dynamic preachers. Also, Pastor Nuttall, who's actually from DC, but other pastors from the DMV that will be sharing with us during our Good Friday service. And so that will be 12 noon on tomorrow. And then on Saturday, we have our extravaganza that will be taking place here at our church and also at the Metro Bar. Many people say, hey, if you build it, the people will come, but we're going to the people. And so we're taking over the Metro Bar, and we have it was basically, quote unquote, be a praise party. So come on out. We invite the whole community. And then we have something fun for the entire family on our church property. So it's going to be a great time. It's going to be from 10 to 2. It is completely free. So we invite everyone to come on out. And then on Sunday morning, we have our Easter Sunday service. And so a lot of people love to come in their Sunday's best. You can come however you want to come. And our sermon is very unique. We're really going to be talking about a murder mystery. And so we would love for everyone to come on out to hear the sermon. But most of all, that we have our music ministry is coming with their very best. Our arts ministry is coming with their very best. And so we're looking forward to being a very, very time of encouragement, of hope, especially in this season and time of our country.
Well, I see you getting a lot of feedback from members there who are praising you and the church for the good work that you're doing. And it sounds like it's going to be an amazing spiritual event on the whole weekend. So that's fantastic. I'm going to ask you, as I asked Pastor Gholston, would you be willing to just hold tight for a minute and then come back together with all three ministers at the end of the program in about, maybe 15 minutes?
Yes, and I will say, first of all, I love my Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church family. I love them so much. They're my heart. They are my heart. And yes, I would love to be able to stay on as well.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we'll see you in a few minutes.
See you in a few minutes.
Thank you. And so last, but of course not least, and there's so many that we could have talked to today, but I'm really excited. Now I'm going to tie all this together at the end of the show. But we are really excited to bring on Reverend Peterman from 19th Street Baptist Church. I'm not sure, Reverend Peterman, if we had a video of you, but we don't need to have that if it's not here, because you're here, and that's what's most important. How are you?
I'm well, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
So you are the senior pastor of 19th Street Baptist Church. You've been there since 2000, actually last year.
I've been there since July of 2025. So.
Wow. Okay. All right. And the church, of course, is one of the most historic churches in Washington, D.C., one of the oldest Black Baptist congregations. And so tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got there.
Absolutely. My journey is quite a unique one. I was born right outside of Newark, New Jersey, and came to Washington, D.C. to attend Howard University as an undergraduate. And it was there at Howard and in D.C. where I really sensed God tugging on me and calling me into ministry. And after discerning a call to ministry, I left Howard and went to Princeton Seminary and had the opportunity to learn and to study there. And from there, served in various different congregations, my home church in New Jersey, and the Cornerstone Baptist Church in Brooklyn, and then the Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago. But there was something about that Potomac fever that had touched me a long time before. And I wanted with my whole heart to return to Washington, D.C., and I did.
And so a few years later, I returned to Washington, D.C., and for nearly 7 wonderful years, I served as an associate pastor at the Shiloh Baptist Church of Washington, while also serving simultaneously as chief of staff for the United Negro College Fund, until I received a call from 19th Street Baptist Church to become their 15th pastor last May. So it's been an extraordinary journey, one that I have that has had its ups and its downs, but I count it all joy today. And it's my greatest desire and my heart's good pleasure to serve the good folks at 19th Street here in DC.
Well, you served at two places, Shiloh
Yes.
and 19th Street, that had really phenomenal pastors, people that this community still talk about.
Yes.
Jerry A. Moore, of course, he's
Jerry
been
Moore.
gone for a few years, but was very active in local elected positions here in the city, and then Reverend Smith over at Shiloh. So I mean, it's not like this guy coming in can just come in and do his own thing. I'm sure you had to face members who remembered when. So, how did that affect your transition into the position of pastor at 19th Street?
Well, well, I welcomed it with great joy. I'm a lover of history, and I'm a lover of DC's history myself. So I welcomed it with great joy to follow in the footsteps of so many wonderful men. DC has had so many phenomenal pastors. We talked about Bishop Alfred and co-pastor Susie Owens in the last segment, but going all the way back to Frederick Douglass, people don't realize that Frederick Douglass was a licensed AME Zion minister right here in Washington, D.C., all the way to Francis Grimke and William Jernigan, up to Walter Henderson Brooks, who was one of my predecessors, who was the pastor at 19th Street for 60 years,
Wow.
who was born into slavery and ended his life in his late 90s as the pastor of 19th Street. And for 60 years, well, he was essentially known as the Dean of Ministers in Washington. Following Walter Henderson Brooks came Jerry Moore, who was a councilman while also pastoring the oldest Black church in the city. So it's just a great, great legacy of individuals who have not only preached the gospel, but preached the social gospel, who cared about the community and who cared about the well-being of people, while also caring for their souls as well. So I welcome the joy. I've been at 19th Street now for almost a year, not quite there yet, and served for 7 years at Shiloh Baptist, two historic churches. Many folks know the great Earl Harrison at Shiloh and Henry Gregory, and then Dr. Smith. So for me, and I think my fellow clergy on with me today would consider it a joy to stand upon the shoulders of these individuals who pastored in this city, who made a difference, who changed lives. And it's just so great to see that another generation of individuals are stepping up to the plate and are really taking the baton and carrying it forward.
I want to go back a second, because you said that you came to Howard. I think you majored in political science, but
Yes.
You got this tug came. What was it that made you decide to go into ministry?
That's a great question. I often get that. For me, I left Howard thinking that I would go into education, and I did. Went after seminary, actually earned a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania in education, but I thought that would be my primary path. But God had different plans. So I worked simultaneously in education and in ministry. And it really came, my call to ministry was discerned through the work that I was doing in social justice, the work that I was doing around the country. My freshman year of college, Trayvon Martin is killed. Followed by Mike Brown, and so many others who were killed by police. And as you know, at that time, there was something rumbling in the nation called the Black Lives Matter movement, which was being birthed. And my classmates and I, we were the first ever to take the hands up, don't shoot photo in Crampton Auditorium at Howard University. And I was traveling around the country, and we were doing social justice work. And something was tugging on my spirit even then, that if I wanted to really help my people, and if I wanted to make a difference, that ultimately the best way to do it would be as a pastor, as a clergyman, and to do it with the institution of the church. Because as you know, the church is the institution that has been at the core and at the forefront of our liberation and our advancement as a people.
So, I mean, that's I can see, it's interesting to hear how what was happening in the world led you in that direction. And I'm just wondering now, I mean, when you speak to your congregation, and as we talked earlier about the needs of the congregation, and I would assume, I haven't been to 19th Street, confess, in a while, but that you have maybe a more senior congregation. So, and how does that work for you? How do you talk to them as a younger pastor, to people who feel like you haven't lived it yet?
Absolutely, absolutely. Ironically, 19th Street is going through a revolutionary period where we are becoming a more and more an intergenerational church. We're really a church of 5 generations. My oldest member is about 106 years old, and my youngest member is still in the womb. So we have about 5 generations in our congregation every Sunday morning. That's both a joy and sometimes a strain. But we look for ways to minister to all of the generations, and that's what we're called to do. We have an amazing youth program, and we have an amazing youth and young adult pastor. We've got youth church and Sunday school and various activities for our young people. We're developing programs for our young adults, and then we got stuff for our working folks, and then we got our seniors, and then we got our super seniors. So we're developing programming that really ministers to the life of every individual who walks in our doors, because Washington is certainly a diverse place. 19th Street is becoming more and more diverse with different people from every walks of life. And it's a great challenge, but one that we welcome, to really minister to people at every stage of their life.
So you are preparing now for, I like who was it? Someone said earlier, that Easter, Mother's Day, Christmas event.
Oh yeah, it's a Super Bowl for the church,
right? So what do you have planned at 19th Street?
Well, it's Super Bowl weekend at 19th Street. Tonight, we will actually worship. We will have with First Baptist Church of the city of Washington, and together we'll have our Maundy Thursday worship service together. Here's why this is so special. This is so special. We do it every year because actually 19th Street and First Baptist Church were once one church that was founded in 1801. And in 1839, this one church became 2 churches when some of the members, because of some racial tensions, grew, and members of some of the white members then left the 19th Street location and went to 10th Street and started another church. And there were some tensions for many years between these 2 congregations that were once one. But tonight, as we do every year, we will come together for our Maundy Thursday feast and celebrate the Lord's Supper and even foot washing this evening. On tomorrow, as many of you know, I'll be worshiping. Pastor Carter mentioned it. I will be worshiping with the Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church. So we'll leave 16th Street and worship with our brothers and sisters on Rhode Island Avenue. And then on Sunday morning, we'll gather for our Easter worship service at 10 a.m. So it's a jam-packed weekend, but we're looking forward to welcoming so many people to 19th Street this weekend.
And have you thought, Pastor Peterman, what your theme is for Sunday?
He is risen. That's our theme. He is risen. Okay. He is risen from the dead.
Wonderful. And for those that may have heard it and didn't quite understand it, because you said you're going to leave 16th Street to go over to Rhode Island Avenue, but that's, 19th Street Baptist Church is located on 16th Street in
Yes.
Washington, D.C. So, and there's a great history there. We look forward actually to getting some of your members on who wrote a book about the history of 19th Street. I know that I've had that for a moment, and I certainly do want to get them on because it looks like they put a lot of work into putting that book together.
It's a fascinating story, so we'd love to come and chat with you about it. It's a fascinating story about how those two churches, how that one church became two churches, and both are still alive and well, and we'll be worshiping together this evening.
So we're going to gather everybody up together now. I'd like to get Reverend Gholston back on, and Reverend Carter. Welcome back, everybody.
Thank you.
Now I know that Reverend Gholston, I think this is your first opportunity to meet Reverend Carter. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yes,
That's right.
And Pastor Peterman as well.
We were together, but we didn't meet. We were together at the installation of a dear friend, Reverend Zoe Reeves, at Shiloh.
Wonderful.
And you don't know it, but I've snuck into your church before. I've been there on a Sunday morning.
Get out of here. Bless you, Doc.
I have. That's
all right.
Let's get out there. Folks want to figure out, well, what are they doing and how do they do it? And what is the word, and that sort of thing. I think that's
I'm honored.
One of the things that one of you said earlier, and our producer and I had a conversation about this, about, one of you, I don't remember which one she pointed to, said was one of the youngest preachers, in the district. And I had to correct that to say, back in the day, and I mean, Pastor Peterman, you as a historian know this, and probably everybody else as well, you are not old men in ministry. And you're not too young men in ministry. You know what I'm saying? That pastors started churches at early ages. I mean, can you all talk a little bit about that? I mean, 19 years old and 20, building churches, as you said, Reverend Carter, with regards to Reverend Owens starting that church at 19. What do you say about people who want to criticize folks because you're too young?
Well, I would say right now, if you look at the demographic of a lot of our African-American churches in the city of Washington, D.C., this group right here, we're amongst the youngest ones. And but I think it has been great to be able to see, while there's been a changing of the guards in D.C., I think it's been a blessing because all of us are, I would say this, I also know Peterman as well, and I'm getting to know Reverend Gholston, I believe we all have old souls as well. So we still wear the robes. So we still understand the African-American church tradition. So we don't want to let that go. And so
that's right.
But I think we're following legends as well. And so that's my part.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I often am asked, so you're the youngest pastor at 19th Street, but I often have to remind folks that Reverend Jerry Moore, who was a councilman at large in D.C. for many years and was a pastor, actually came to 19th Street at 27 and pastored from 1946, I believe, to 1996. So 50 years.
The other thing I find that is consistent with what I hear you all doing is, back when we were getting ready to celebrate Emancipation Day here in the District of Columbia, and as enslaved people were freed, it was the church that provided the direction, the resources, everything that folks needed in order to become free people, right? To live as free people. And what you all are doing in your churches seems to be symbolic of that kind of service leadership. So let's talk about that. I mean, why is it so important now today for the church to do more than just have a place where people go on Sunday and listen to a sermon and then go out and try to deal with the world? Why do you think these programs are so important to the community?
Yeah, for me, it's never lost on me that 19th Street, the story begins in 1801, 64 years before the end of the Civil War. and then becomes 19th Street in 1839. So for 60 years before the end of the Civil War, Black people were worshiping in Washington, D.C. on 19th and I Streets. And that always is sombering to me, because when I think about what they created for each other, the community that they created, the resources that they shared, the institution that they created with such little means. And I think about all that we have today, even though we still are certainly disadvantaged as a people. But it empowers me to think about what are the ways, how can we take care of each other today the way our ancestors did in the early 1800s, when literally slavery was still legal in the United States of America. But you had this institution called the church, feeding people, taking care of people, providing shelter, providing clothing, teaching young children how to read and write. That is the mission of the church. And as far as I'm concerned, that mission hasn't changed. It has continued from generation to generation.
Pastor Gholston?
That was very well said, Pastor Peterman. All that I can add is that the Bible says that the word becomes flesh and dwells among us. And there's a saying, I believe that it's attributed to Martin Luther, that says, preach the gospel, and when possible, use words. And yeah. I believe that with all of my heart, that people are not necessarily always looking to see what we have to say. People are looking at what the church will actually do and showing up in our community. And that's why I'm inspired by the work of my brothers here. I'm inspired by the great legacy that each of them continues. When my pastor started New Home Baptist Church, he was 19 years old as well. And he and Bishop Owens are good friends. Bishop Owens, in fact, Pastor Carter knows, but Bishop Owens married my wife. And I do consider myself as carrying on and continuing that legacy of those storefront preachers from DC that just they had the Holy Ghost. They just had the Holy Ghost and a word, and they would preach on the street corner. We would go out every Saturday on the corners and preach, and that's how I got my start. We would preach a sermon and then invite folks in for a meal. That was what ministry looked like. My mother was the head of the missionary ministry, and they started what they called the Feed the Hungry program, and I would go out and try to minister with them on the corner, and then come in and I would sit down on the piano and start playing while people ate the meal that we served, and that's how we were bred in this city. These are the models of ministry that we've seen. We remember Greater Mount Calvary at the corner of Park Road and Georgia Avenue. We remember when they were one of the first Black churches in this city to purchase a building that was owned by another prominent congregation. We saw them establish the Family Life Center. We've seen them establish schools in our community. So the Spirit testifies to the Spirit that the ministry that you see gathered here, it bears witness to each other, because we come from the same roots. We're cut from the same fabric, from the same cloth. And it's just to God be the glory that we have the privilege. It is a privilege and an honor to be able to pastor God's people and to even be thought of as a person who could in some way pastor the community in this city. It's a privilege.
One of the things before we close is that, people are very, very grateful for the inspiration that you all provide, on Sunday morning. Let me ask this question first, though. Do all of you all have what do you call it? Ministries that online where people can watch and see? And okay, so we would love to. I don't know if we put those websites up, but if you would just want to shout out what it is where people can go and I know you want them in the pews, but if they're in their home pew where they can see you. Okay, we're putting those up now, so that's fine. So we have each one. So I'll go to my question. My last question is, I would like each one of you all to give a word of inspiration to the others. Whoever wants to start, please. And I'm going to take it in as my word too, because I need it. So, but give a word of inspiration to the other. And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but preachers need words, right? And I think that's why you all have these Monday gatherings and you get together periodically just to get a word. But if you don't mind, I would love for you to give each other a word before we close out.
It's on my heart. It's on my heart. We're in the middle of a Bible study in the book of Revelation, and just last night we were talking about the message to the church at Thyatira in Revelation chapter 3, and it's a word of encouragement, because there are times, Pastor Peterman, and there are times, Pastor Carter, when it will seem like you just don't have enough. There are times the word to the church at Sardis is that you have a great reputation, but you're alive, but there are only a few of you who are still faithful. And I was struck, and everybody in the Bible study last night, we were really struck by this simple message: strengthen what remains. Strengthen what remains. Remember even to the church at Ephesus in chapter 2. Remember that first love. There are going to be times. I'm a little older than y'all. I'm about 15 years older, I think, than both of y'all. And I will say this is now my 9th year pastoring. I'm working on year 10 at Peace Fellowship Church, and there are going to be times when your tank is low. There are going to be times when the people that were once faithful vanish. And I want you to be encouraged, my brothers, to always strengthen what remains. Rely on that first love. Hold on to all you need is a mustard seed. And I'll leave it right there, because now I feel like preaching. All you need is just a little bit, just a little bit, and it goes a long way. Somebody says it moves a mountain, y'all. So just be encouraged.
Thanks, Reverend Gholston. I don't know if either one of you all wanted to add anything or share a word, brief word, because we're at.
Well, I'll encourage us to, as I've shared with my congregation, we've been built to last. Nehemiah was called to rebuild the walls, and we're all following great, influential leaders. And so we're in the process of rebuilding walls, not because many of them have collapsed, many just because of the times we're restructuring it for the future. And but one thing I love what Nehemiah is saying, he said, I'm doing a good work and I can't come down. And all of us, we're doing the Lord's work. And while we're doing the Lord's work, don't get discouraged. We got to keep building. We can't come down.
Right. Reverend Peterman.
I'll close us out in the spirit of the season and say, my mind drifts back to the story of the women going to the tomb that Sunday morning, and they were going to anoint Jesus's body with herbs and with spices, and to prepare his body for a fitting burial. But they didn't know how the stone would be removed. They didn't know how they would remove it. Did they have the strength to remove it? They didn't really know what they would face when they got to the tomb, but they went anyway. And I think that's ministry. We don't know often how the stone is going to be removed. We don't know what it is that we're going to find when we get there. We don't know if there will be soldiers guarding the body, but we got to go anyway. So that's my message. It may even be my message on Sunday. Go to the tomb anyway. Go to the tomb anyway.
Gentlemen, pastors, thank you so very much for being with us today, for bringing us into, I think, what will be a memorable Easter weekend, I should say. And I hope to visit your churches soon again, and not for a funeral, but for a service. And God bless you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Denise.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All righty.
Peace.
And I want to thank you for tuning in into Let's Talk today, as we delved into the lives and ministries of these impactful, amazing pastors, Reverend Gholston, Reverend Carter, and Reverend Peterman. Their journeys and commitment to uplifting our community reminds us of the importance of faith in addressing both spiritual and social issues. know that the doors of their churches and so many others are open to you. And we just hope that you will recognize that these are folks who are all trying to build, inspire, and support. Have a happy Easter, and we'll see you back here next week.
Where do you